this is Terry, and what we're going to try and do today is propagate an orchid. This one here is my Dendrobium orchid, which has flowered, flowers have all gone, and then I get these strange little things called KEIKIS or KEIKIS, which is Hawaiian for babies. And these little plantlets are, some people might call them pups, I suppose, but they're coming off from the main stem of the Dendrobium orchid. So what I might try to do is propagate, see if I can get a few more from this orchid. It's a white orchid, not the most attractive in the world, but you get lots of flowers on it. I think there's a little bit of pink in the flowers too. So there's a number of these KEIKIS coming out near the base. Some of them are actually rooting already into the compost. They should be easy, I think, in theory, to propagate from. So what I'll need to do is cut these off and put them into some nice compost. I made up a mixture of orchid compost proper, which is very bark-like, and added to it some of the Miracle-Gro compost, which is very fibrous. It's a non-peat compost, which everybody is using this year, pretty much. So with my craft knife, I very carefully, it's tougher than I imagined it would be, just cut off the little keiki without slashing my fingers. I had read that once you have about 3 roots on these little plantlets, then that's enough. You can then take a cutting. Elsewhere I've read that the roots should be about 1 inch or 2. Those ones I think qualify. There's more than 3, and they're 1 inch long, probably 2.5 centimetres long. On the cut edge, I quite like the idea of the cut edge being sort of fairly dry before I water them, so I'm going to put them into the dry compost and not do anything with them for 2 or 3 days. I'll try again. I think 3 will be enough. I think using a craft knife or a scalpel for this is probably better than using scissors, which would cause tissue damage. I don't think we want too much squashing of the tissue. Well, that looks like 3 nice ones, doesn't it? We've got long enough roots. The next thing is to put them into this pot of the 50-50 or 1-to-1 mixture of orchid compost, which is bark basically, bits of bark, mixed up with this Miracle-Gro or very fibrous compost. You'll notice that these roots, they're called adventitious roots because they come from the stem of the plant. So the adventitious roots are actually quite green, so they can actually do photosynthesis, which means they will help to feed the plant and feed themselves with the help of light. So it's not a bad idea, I think, to plant these things round near the outside of this translucent pot, so they're getting the benefit of light. So just carefully tuck them in without damaging the roots if we can avoid that. Make a bit of space. Because the compost is dry, fairly dry, it's quite easy just to tuck the thing in, scatter the compost round about the roots, and then tuck them in very gently. I said I'm not going to do anything with them for 2 or 3 days. I want the cut end to dry up before I introduce too much water around them, but I don't want them to dehydrate. So my next plan is to make a little mini cloche to try and stop them dehydrating. You can see on the plant here we've still got a good number of these little keikis. There's another one here which might be worth trying. Now this one, it's got a small amount of old stem or old cane attached to it. It might be an idea to try and cut that one off. So we'll just take that one off as well. And we'll try to plant it complete with the bit of stem. So I'm actually cutting the cane itself, and we'll put that into a container. So the good thing is the piece of cane It's also called a pseudobulb, apparently. The pseudobulb contains some water, so it will keep the little plantlet supplied for a few days perhaps until it manages to make more roots for itself. So this is my plan. I'll speed this bit up. So this is a way to very carefully, don't cut your fingers off, make an easy cloche just to keep the humidity high. So here it is. I kept the top on for maximum humidity and just slid it very carefully over the leaves to make sure that they don't get broken. And then I'm putting it on the windowsill. I haven't watered it. I've just, kept it as humid as possible. Putting it inside that, again, slightly translucent pot so it doesn't get too much bright sunlight on it until it's got roots of its own. And that's it. I'll sit there for a few days and we'll see how it turns out. Meanwhile, what about the other one? The one with the pseudobulb? Well, here it is. I don't really want to bury the pseudobulb because it's green, it's a stem, it should be above ground. So I've made up the same compost mixture as before, 50-50 of the orchid compost and the peat-free material. And I'm barely tucking the pseudobulb or stem under the ground in this pot. It's really just going to be near the surface. I'm trying to make room for the roots to be covered and leave the little stem just as it is. So it's not being tucked in an awful lot. The weight of the stem is going to help it hold itself down. And I now have to try and keep it humid. Again, I haven't watered it, so I'm just going to keep it humid for a few days. And this time, what I'm going to do is put it into an old aquarium that I have. It sits in the greenhouse. It has a few other things in beside it that like humid conditions. I've got some insectivorous plants there, some pitcher plants, and a fern, one or two other things. And this little fellow, this little keiki attached to a bit of the mammy, is going to go into the same tank. I really need to clean the tank up a little bit. So there's its other inhabitants. I sit this inside, still not watered. So again, we'll come back to that in a few weeks. Meanwhile, time has passed and 2 or 3 days have passed by. I'm coming back to the one I prepared before with the 3 cuttings in, and there they are, and you can see how humid it is inside. And what I'm going to do today is give it a little bit of water, let the water run through, and then put it back in again. I hope you enjoyed that look at propagating of orchids. That will be a few weeks before we know if it was successful or not. If you'd like to pop back to this channel again in about 2 or 3 weeks, or subscribe, and you'll find out when I put up another video showing if all these things have worked or not. In the meantime, I'll leave a wee link to my other channel, which is Terry's Travels channel, where you can see videos of the outdoors, bits of nature, plants and so on. You can look at those while you're waiting for this next exciting orchid video to pop up. Thanks for looking.